Hi, Kathy here from Kathy's Cute Creations. Today is December. It is the last time that we're going to be working on our block of the month, and we are going to put it together. We're going to quilt it as we go. I'm going to show you how to do that. You need to have your backing fabric, your batting, and your top pieces. Now you need 2 pieces sewn together side by side, and that's it at this point. And then I'm going to show you how to attach them. We can make this really simple. You can tie it off if you would like, or you can follow me along. And I don't know if you do know how to tie something off. I'll show that in another video. In the meantime, you should have taken your sample that I showed you last time and done some stitches in it so that you could get used to adjusting your tension on your sewing machine, because everybody's machine is different. You don't have to do any kind of free motion quilting. You could actually just do everything with your walking foot if you would like. And if you want to sew all of your stuff in the ditch around the squares, you could do that. But you need to keep in mind that you need to at least put some type of stitching every 4 inches. That is the maximum that I stitch in order to keep the batting from falling apart and wadding up into a ball when you wash it. This is the reason that you're doing the quilting. All right, let's get started, and I'll show you my pieces I have out here on the table so you have an idea what I'm talking about. Now keep in mind there's many ways to do this. This is just one way. First off, as I took them down off of the wall, let me show you my little thing here. All right, if you look at this, and you see I have purple, which is kind of hard to tell you, but that's a purple. Well, actually it's not. Yeah, it's a purplish blue. Then I have a pink, a blue, and an orange, and then a yellow. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colors, and I have marked them. So the first row, top left, I did the first color. Put it over here so you can see it. So that color matches this. I put the next one right underneath it. This is the way that I'm keeping it straight. Third one is blue. Fourth one is orange. And the 5th row is yellow. That's all I did. You can pin it, you can mark it, you do whatever you want. I'm just telling you how I did it. This way you can follow me along. All right, so that was the first thing. The second thing, if you want to mark it. Now, there's a couple different ways to do it. The first thing is I'm not marking anything. I am letting it tell me what to do. So if you wanted to, this is just an example now, and I have this white sew line. It's like a piece of chalk, but it's in a pencil. And you could, and this is just me talking now. So here I've got the ruler. Remember, I made the comment about every 4 inches. Let me get that light so there's no glare. Hold on. Now the first thing I did was I took my black fabric, because that's my background. I laid it down. I put my batting on it. This is going to be the top, because this is where I'm working from to start out with. And what I did was when I got down to the bottom, I folded it up and I pinned it, because I don't want it on the floor as I'm working on it. My sewing machine's right there, so I'm going to be using this entire table here. And then the first thing that you want to do is you want to take your block and you want to put it upside down. So this is the right side. Let me show it to you. Here's the right side. So you want to turn it, because like I said, this is the top of your fabric. Hold on, let me get it straightened. So I've laid it down and I pinned it. So this is the top portion of it. And I'm going to have this part underneath my sewing machine. I'm not trying to be cruel, but if you have a bad case of OCD, don't use black fabric, because it will drive you crazy. I am totally serious. I want to show you this. You see this right here? And all I've done is laid out the batting. It's going to look a heck of a lot worse when I get done with it. All right, so the back side looks like that because I rolled this to get it on my table. So use a white or an off-white or something like that. Now I'm going to take it over the sewing machine. I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. This is the way it's going to lay underneath my machine. And I'm going to do this block. Then when I'm done, I'm going to do the next block. Then when I'm all finished, I'm going to connect the second block to this block and then quilt it. So after you have the first two quilted, which is what I have done, you take your second piece and you lay it down the correct way. Then you're going to fold it over on top of the first one. Let me show you. You're laying it like this. And then you're going to pin it because you're going to sew it. And I line up the middle like this because the middle is right there, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to line it up. So I'll line that up the best I can, pin it on both ends, and then while it's connected, in other words, don't pick it up and sew it. What you're doing is you're sewing it while it's connected to the batting and the backing. All right, so you're going to pin it, and then you're going to sew along the seam here, which is going to attach it, and then you're going to roll it over, and it's going to be automatically sewn on there, and then you're going to quilt it. All right, so let's do that. So here I've gone ahead and sewn it. As you can see, it's all sewn. Then you're going to lay it and smooth it out the best you can. You're making sure you're getting rid of your wrinkles. And then you're going to take it over and you're going to quilt those two squares. Okay? That's what we're doing now. We're going to go ahead and quilt these two and just continue. Keep doing the same thing over and over. And then when I get finished, I'll show you what it looks like. All right, here's the second one.
I don't think Kate would go for this.
Are you saying that my sister is selfish enough to deprive her husband to be of soulless when she herself was going missing?
And I've already sewn on and laid out the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and finish them all up and then be back. So now is when you're going to square it up. This is just like squaring up fabric. And in my case, I take my ruler, I lay it down here, and I'm lining it up with this 1.5 inch, and I'm slowly trimming the edge off so that the whole thing will look right. Now I've done two sides. I'm going to continue to do the next two sides. I got this side and that side, and then I'm going to show you some of the quilting on this. Alright, so I've got it laid out here on the table, so we're going to look at some of the stitches. Just to get you an idea of what I've done. Each block is a different kind of stitch. Hopefully this shadows off that light. Not too bad on that. Let's go to the next square over here. Back it up a little bit. There you go. And then I need to pull it up a little bit more on the table to get those other two, so hold on a second. And then here's the last two. And then to give you an idea what the back looks like, we'll just get real close here so you can see it. White fuzz stuff off. And now I'm going to try to figure out what kind of binding to use. Here are the two fabrics that I have to use for the binding. I can either go with this, which is the blues, or I can take this, which has all the other different reds in it. Here is the fabric that I decided to go ahead and put on the border as the binding. Not the border, I'm sorry. First thing I'm going to do, because I just laid this down, is I'm going to square up this right-hand side, and I'm going to make my strips 2.5 inches. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Now, do you remember what to do when we square up? You take your ruler, you put it along, and this is the fold of my fabric now. Put it along the fold, and you can see it's right here, all along the fold. Okay, you look on here on the right hand side, you make sure that both the fabrics are underneath there. See that little, see that? Now both fabrics will be cut. Not on the selvage. The selvage is this up here, the white stuff. It's folded in half. So let me go ahead and cut it. I always put a weight on the end there, because I can't hold it all on. And there we go, we got that end off. And now I'm going to measure 2.5 inches, because that's the width of my strip. And I take another long ruler, and I lay it down 2.5, and I'm lining up this ruler here with the 2.5 inch, and use the same rulers throughout this whole process here so that it stays even on your fabric. Then I hold on to that, put this one up against it, put my weight on the end of it, move this, and then I have 2.5 inch strip, and I cut it. Then by doing that, this strip here stays square. And then I just repeat myself. Now I'll cut out some strips, and then I will show you how I'm going to put them together over there at the sewing machine. Also, keep in mind that when you're cutting the selvage off, you also want to go ahead and square it up. So just take your ruler, just like we did when we were cutting it. Pick a line, which I'm picking the longest line right here so that I can see it. And then all I do is just cut the edge off. That's it. That easy. And do the other side also. Now what you need for this here is you're going to need a friction pin, a ruler, and then your rotary cutters for the tail end, and some pins. And this is what I do. You can do one of two things. If you're new and you've never done this before, you can take your 2 pieces of fabric, put them together, and sew a 1/4 inch right there. And that's all there is to it. Open it up, and there you have it. Now, if you want to do it as if you've been quilting for quite a while and you also want to learn this, then you take and you're going to put your right sides together, and you're going to put them at an angle like this. And what I do is I leave a little piece at the bottom down here, and you can go ahead and put it right at the top if you want. And then you take your ruler, and you're going to sew your seam from this top corner, the left-hand side, down to the bottom right. So it's really easier if you can't eyeball it, and you usually can't do it at the very beginning, is to put a mark with your friction pin. And just mark it all the way down. And of course I'm using the color that pretty well blends in with my fabric. And you can barely see it right there. Then you go to the sewing machine, and when you stitch that, which I'm going to put a pin in here, and we're just going to pretend it's been stitched so that you can see what I'm talking about. If you're one of those people that need a little bit of visual. Alright, so when you get done, you flip your fabric over, and it looks like that. And then you'll just take that, you'll iron that down, and it blends right in. Okay? And then after you sew it, you'll have this little bitty piece here that you'll just cut that off 1/4 inch. You'll put your ruler up 1/4 inch. You'll put my 1/4 inch is right here, so I put my ruler on there, and then I just take my rotary cutter and go right along there and cut it off, and then you just get rid of that. All right? Then when you get done, and this one's done, we're going to pretend we're finished with that. Now we're going to do the other end. So we're bringing it on down. We'll grab another piece. And then while this one is still at the sewing machine, make sure you kept it straight so that you didn't twist it. And then we'll repeat the process. You lay this one on there. You'll go ahead, you'll put your ruler up there. I usually mark here, get my mark, then I go up here and get a mark, and then I go straight down with my pen. And then I'll do all these strips together. And then when we get done doing that, we'll take our fabric. After it's one big long strip, you'll take it, fold it in half, take it to the ironing board, and you're going to iron it down just like that, because you want half of this size. And that's why I do the 2.5 inch. So let me go ahead and I'll go to the sewing machine and I'll set this up to sew so that you can see me doing that, so you'll know what I'm talking about. Now I usually put 2 pins in here to sew this. And I'm not doing anything different. I'm still using the length of 2.5. I'm not locking the edges in. Let's see if that worked. Yes, it did. All right, now I'm going to do all of them like completely finished. Then I'm going to open them up and iron all of them. And that's it. So you do that with all of yours. After you have them all sewed and before you iron them, the next step is to cut this off. Remember, you're going to put your ruler at 1/4 inch on the line, and you're just going to cut your excess off. Do it to all of them. Flip them like this. So here's what the seam looks like when you've got it all ironed. And you may be thinking, well, how about could I just take the seam and open it up? And for those that don't know what that means, split it apart like this and iron it. In other words, why couldn't I just do that? Well, that makes it weak. And if this were a blanket, not a table runner, the first thing you grab, which you probably never even thought about it before, is on a blanket. What is the first thing you grab? You don't grab the middle of your blanket. You're usually grabbing the edge, which will have this on it. So you wouldn't want this thing to be weak on your blanket, because that'd be the first thing that you're going to tear and wear out. This is the way that I do the binding now. I leave a little bit of a tail here. It's not much. Then I'll pin it at the very beginning to get me started. Let me pull this up a little bit here. So I put a pin here. I'll start right on this side of the pin. And notice that the folded side goes in towards your backing, and I put my binding on the back. The reason being that when I get finished, I want to be able to fold it over. Let me pin it as if it were sewn. Hold on. And sew it down on this side of the fabric so I can see where it's going in placement. Otherwise, you could sew it on this side and flip it over. Now for this piece, you want to use your walking foot. If you've never used it, now's a great time to learn. It will help feed all this fabric because this is quite bulky here. You're looking at 2 pieces of fabric plus your batting. Now we're adding 2 more pieces of fabric because we have folded over fabric. We'll lock it into place. And you just take your time. You do not want this fabric pulling on your needle because it will break your needle. So you want to make sure that there's plenty of fabric on the table or on your lap, but not hanging down over the edge pulling on it. So I usually keep my hand on this, which is keeping it relaxed like that so that it's not pulling. And you're just slowly putting the binding on. And as this walking foot goes, if you've, which I would not suggest, but you could do it, if you wanted to pin all the way around or use your little wonder clips, that's fine. But as this walking foot moves, it's slowly pushing this fabric forward where you can see this little bit of wrinkle right here, which means I'm going to end up with more fabric up here. And you don't want that to go underneath there and get wadded up like that. So I slowly move out the pins as I go along. Or the clips, whatever. I'm not using either one today. I'm just slowly going along here. No hurry. Just a few inches at a time. And while you're doing this, it's also keeping the back real nice and smooth. Or a nice straight seam. And then we come up to the end, I'm going to show you what we're going to do here. Now when you're coming to the edge, and these are going to be squared off at the end, you're going to want to take your ruler and you're going to want to find where the 1/4 inch is, in from the right and up from the bottom. So what you're going to do, and I think I'm going to use my chalk pencil here. Let's see, I could go ahead and use my, let's see if I can mark on there. Now what I'll do, which I think it makes it a little bit easier, is I take my fabric and I go ahead and I fold it and put a crease in it right here on the edge. Okay, so there's the crease right here on the edge of my fabric. And then I can take my ruler and come in a 1/4 inch and mark it right here. So that's it right there, because what you want to do, and my walking foot actually went in 3/4 instead of a 1/4, so that's what I'm going to end up doing here, just to make it work. And you could do a 1/2 inch if you wanted to. It doesn't really make a difference. All right, so here's my marker right here. And I'm going to bring my needle down to here, and then I'm going to stop. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to back mine up. I'm going to lock it into place. And then I'm going to cut my thread and come off. All right, so what you want to do is, after you cut it off, you take your fabric, make sure it's folded like that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take our fabric and we're going to act like our fabric comes right off, our binding comes right off our fabric. So you do that, put a crease in it, open it up, and now I'm going to have a crease coming straight down here, and it's going to go over my little dot that I made. So let me show you that. So let me get you a close-up of that. All right, here's the close-up. See my dot right there? Okay, that came down on one of the dots, and this is my crease in my fabric. The reason you want this crease is that when you turn it back this way. Now we're going to fold it this way. Move my hands out of the way. So first it was folded this way. Now we're going to fold it this way. Like this. So it'll have a crease down here and it'll be along the edge here. When you put your hand, your finger, you can feel the bump right here, the ridge. Well, what you're trying to do is, and you can see where the stitch line is right up here, you're trying to put your needle right in there. Not quite sure why my camera was sideways. I don't understand it. But, all right, so what I've done is the needle, let me move this up a little bit. So the needle on the sewing machine needs to go right in this spot here, which is the part that I was trying to feel for. And if you flip it over, let me see if I can get it in the light here. You can tell that it's going to go right on that seam. So my needle needs to go in this top up here. I know that's probably hard to understand. But my needle needs to go right in here. So while I got it marked, and I know that it's correct, then I'll take my pencil, mark right here. Get it to mark. Because that's where I want my needle to go in. Now while the pin is still stuck in the fabric, I put my needle down right on the back side of that pin before I take the pin out. Because you know, once you take your pin out, it's already moved the fabric and everything. I went ahead and took a look at it to see how it turns over, and it looks fine. It's all caught. There's no holes, no gaps. So it looks good, and then I'll just continue sewing right on down there. So I get to the other corner. Then I'll repeat myself. And then I got to thinking, maybe you were wondering, what did I do with all this binding? Well, I remember now I have these little baby buddies. So I have my binding wrapped up right here on my sewing machine. And if you don't have one of them, normally what I did was I had it on the floor to my left, or I had it flung over my shoulder on my left shoulder, and then just slowly feed it along this fabric as I need it. Now here comes the fun part. Make sure it's in the picture. This is the way that I do a binding. Here's your two pieces. I don't need that pin in there. All right, so you take it and I lay it down. Now I have it facing away from me. And then I overlap it, make sure that I can see it right here. And since this was cut 2.5, that's what I measure, 2.5. So I go to the edge of this, the bottom piece, and I measure, well, let's turn it this way so I can read it on my ruler. 2.5, right here. And I mark it. So it's showing right here at 2.5. So the distance between the edge of this and the overlap is 2.5. Look, I can't even see my mark. It like blended right in. There it is right here. Let me mark it a little bit more. Okay, then you take your scissors and you cut this excess off. Now this has got a lot of give in it, and because of that, I'm going to do 2.25 instead of 2.5. So I'll do 2.25. See if I can make my mark, which is right there, and then I'll take my scissors and I'll cut it right off, just like that, and discard that. And then we're going to take this and we're going to make it so we'll be like this, and we'll sew it together. The ease of sewing, I'm going to show you. I've only got this much left on the left hand side, so I'm going to take these stitches out because I need more room to sew, and you'll see why in a minute. So let me take this out and then I'll be right back. All right, you take out as much as you want off this left hand side for the ease of your sewing. Now here's what it looks like, And this is the way that I remember it. I take my left side, I take it and I open this up. And what we're wanting to do is we want to put the same kind of seam we had in before. So remember, the right sides have to be facing each other. So if you lay this one straight out like this, open it up just like that so you can remember. Take the right one and you're going to take it like this, open it up, and now put it face down. So pull these two together, put it face down just like we did before. You want to lay it down here and you're going to mark it from one end to the other with your ruler and your friction pen or your chalk or whatever you're going to do. And if you feel like you need to go to the ironing board and iron these pieces, by all means, iron these pieces. Let me get my ruler. And mark it here. Now I'm going to pin it just like I did before. I pin it here at the top and I pin it down here at the bottom. Take it over to the sewing machine and sew the line diagonal. Then when you're done, and this is the way that you can test it to make sure you did it correctly, in case you got confused, take it, pin it before you iron it, before you sew it, and open it up, and sure enough, that's the correct way it's going to look when you get done. So take it to the sewing machine and iron that, and then when you're finished ironing it, take it over to the sewing machine and sew it. When you're done sewing it, we'll cut this edge off, and then I'm going to show you how to flip your binding and do the rest of it, and then we'll be finished. And I took it to the ironing board, I ironed this down, and now I just go right back over the same seam here. So it's sort of like a double lock. I go ahead and I pin it, pull it, stretch it out, pin it, fit it on there, lock it into place, and then just slowly finish it off. Take my time. I got a little bit here that I'm pulling out to make it fit. I'm going to go ahead and pin it. Just keep that batting there on the edge. Okay. Right over the tail of that, and I lock it into place. And that's it. And there you go. Now here's where I put my clips on it, but you can use pins if you want. I took my finished binded table runner, whatever you're making. I took it to the iron and I laid it like this and I ironed it. Now I've rolled it over to the front part and I'm slowly taking this over to the seam since it's nice and ironed, and all I'm doing is laying it over and I'm using clips. If you want to use pins, you can. It makes no difference. Once you flip it over, it stops right there where you've ironed it, as if it had a crease. So you're not going to have to worry about it getting it too far over to the left or not enough. And then all I do is put clips in, and then whenever I find a little scraggly here, I just toss it in the trash. If you needed to pin it, what you do, you can do it two different ways. You can either pin it straight, like this, which some people like to do this. And if you want to hand stitch this on, you can hand stitch it also. I'm not. I'm going to actually use it by machine. I'm going to do it that way. And just go along here, the whole entire thing, and just put my clips on. Whoops, let's turn it that way. That's all I do. All right, you can do the whole thing like that. In order to do this mitered corner, this is going to be kind of hard to show you, but I have another video coming out shortly that I'm going to show you how to make, and it's a quilt as you go Christmas runner. And I got a better picture of the mitered corners, but what you want to do, in this case, I come on the left, I come down with my corner, and then I'm folding my one coming down this way over the top, and then I pin it. Let me get a pin, and it miters that corner right there. And then I pin these corners. Let's see if I can grab it and show it to you. Let's see if you can see that on the camera. Okay. And like I said, I have a better video coming up. But that's what I do, is I take this left-hand side here, I fold it over to the left, then I take the top and I fold it down over to mitered. Now, if yours doesn't miter, it ends up, I'm trying to think. Let's see. Let's say the whole entire thing is the corner. When you fold it this way for your corner, you can always turn around and fold your corner this way. Your corners can actually lay over on top of each other like this. They don't have to be mitered like that, you know, like the triangle type thing. They can go like this, if that's what you can do, okay? Especially since this is the first time you've done it. And if you don't like corners like this, you can always take your project, whatever you're making, and you can round your corner. I'm going to get something to show you. Hold on one second. Let's say that you really don't want to do a corner because they're too hard for you for whatever reason. Then what you do is you get you something like this jar here, which is what I have. It's just a little jar. And you take it to your corner. Now, of course, this is before you bind it. Don't do it after you've binded it. Do it beforehand, before the binding process. Put it on your quilt at the end of it and mark it with your pen, and then move this and cut it with your scissors. Then when you do your binding, instead of going straight like this with your binding, you're just going to go right around the circle, or the half circle, whatever you want to call it, and then bind that way. Okay? That's just another way you can do it. I went ahead and I put a fresh bobbin in because I don't want to run out of my bobbin while I'm doing this. I have matched the top thread with the top fabric. So I have a blue up here, which you can see it right there. And then I have black in my bobbin because what it's going to do is it's going to, when I sew, it's going to hit this area right here, which is black. Now this is where you could put a fancy stitch if you wanted to, or you can put a straight stitch. I'm just going to put a straight stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and increase my length to 3 instead of 2.5. I've got the same needle that I've been using all along. Nothing's changed. So my needle, let me show you up here where it's closer, is going to come along right here. I don't want it too close to this because it may slip off and not catch it. And then, let me see if I can see the fabric down here. Let me take this clip off here for you a minute. So when you turn it here, you can you see my, yeah. So see my threads right here? right there. That's what you're covering with this. You're covering that. So you won't see that line of sewing. This covers it up, and then you just sew right along there. All right, that's our object. Just take your time. Don't be in a hurry. And then you don't need to lock it in place, because as you come around, you're going to go ahead and go over the top of it, and we're going to go beyond it. All right, so what you're doing is you're looking on this side, and you're making sure that you have all those stitches covered. All right, and I do, and it helped when you ironed your fabric here. So just go slowly along here, and you're watching your needle so it doesn't go too far to the left. And that's it. And every time you come up to a clip, you just move it. So just take your time and you go all the way around your border. Y'all don't need to watch me do that. So, well, there it is, all finished. I got it laid out here on my table. I don't have any room on my design wall, or I would have put it up there, but I'm all out of space. Hopefully you have an idea how big it is or how long it is. Well, we're finished with the block of the month, and I hope everybody enjoyed it and learned something. And I'm not going to do one next year. I am going to try to do more projects. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.